What's up, KSP fans? It's dylloop and welcome back to another tutorial video in the KSP tutorial series. Today we will be covering intermediate rocket design, mostly focused on thrust to weight ratio, and we'll also be covering some more advanced staging techniques such as Asparagus Staging. Next episode we'll be doing advanced stuff like delta V, and that's really advanced, so that may wait until after the orbital tutorial because it'll be more useful there. Also, we may or may not, depending on how much time we have, get to look at some of the energy and probe bodies this episode. So, first off, to calculate your thrust to weight ratio, you need to divide thrust by weight. And your weight is your mass, which is defined on the descriptions of the item. So it says total mass 0.18. It's mass times 9.81 meters per second. And that's the gravity of Kerbal. So if we get this command pod Mach 1 with a mass of 0.8, and we get a parachute with a mass of 0.1, and we get some fuel tanks. Now if we get 9 of these, so 1, 2, 3, then we can control grip, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, and we add onto it a non-vectoring liquid fuel engine, which will bring the mass up to a total of 22.4, and the weight after multiplying 22.4 by 9.81, we get a weight of 219.744. Now the thrust on this, because remember the thrust to weight ratio is thrust divided by weight, the thrust is defined by the engine max power, so that's 215. So if you divide 215 by 219.74, which is our weight, we get 0.9, or more precisely 0.978411124, but we don't need to look at that. 0.9 is fine for us. We know that it's below 1. Now, in a ratio, basically that's negative. We don't want anything below 1 is not going to lift up off the ground. So if we launch this right now using 9 fuel tanks, this thing won't move until, of course, we burn enough fuel to overcome the thrust to weight ratio and bring it up, which we can show you guys right now. Where we get landed in Kerbal. It's on this giant stack of fuel tanks. One teeny tiny engine under them. Now if we're thrusting, we're not moving anywhere at all, and that's because the thrust to weight ratio is too low, and then we start sliding across the ground and lifting up barely. We're not moving anywhere, only because the thrust to weight ratio is so low that it doesn't matter. Now of course, as we burn the fuel in this one fuel tank, or this one, we're going to get a thrust to weight ratio of 1.08, which is above 1. So as we're lifting up, we're slowly getting faster and faster, but that's not optimal. That's spending a lot of fuel not doing anything. So if we go into the vehicle assembly building and we remove one of these fuel tanks, and I forgot to do some of the staging, so we add our thing to our stage here. Now this is the minimalist thrust for this weight. This whole mass of this whole ship is 20.15. The weight of it, by multiplying 9.81, is 197.6715, and if we divide 215 by that, we get 1.08, which is above 1. So it'll lift off directly, but it's not going to go very fast. Let's try that again. Now remember, the thrust to weight ratio is per stage. So every stage you're going to have to calculate what you dropped off, and we'll get more into that in a second, but you have to calculate what you dropped off and what you didn't, and anything above this is going to be dry weight. So if we have an engine right above the hatch, or even in the middle here, that's not going to be counted towards our thrust because it's not going to be thrusting, and everything above this engine is basically dead weight. Until, of course, you decouple something, and then that lowers the weight and gives the next engine some extra room. That's why you decouple stuff, is because you don't want to carry on to weight that you don't need, including the engines themselves. So this thing lifted up off the ground right away, and like the other one, is steadily going faster and faster. Now the optimal thrust to weight ratio is at least 1.7, but no more than 2.2. You could go more than that, you could go a lot more than that, but you're going to experience a lot of G's, and if they ever add G's to the game, then you don't want to kill all your Kerbals. So 2.2, this right here is going to be 1.6 after doing all the math again. We have a thrust of 215. The whole mass of the ship is 13.4. And the weight is 131.454. I'm going to add little, probably little words and stuff up there to show you guys what I'm doing. And then if you divide if you take 215 divided by 131, which is our weight, 0.454, you get 1.6, which is a lot better. Now again, what you have to do is just stressing this, because your ship isn't going to go anywhere if you don't do this right. You have to first go into your command pod, total mass 0.8. Now, the mass of these fuel tanks is 2.25. So that's where I'm getting these numbers at, this is the total mass. So you have to multiply how many fuel tanks you have. You basically add up every part, which is tedious. But if you want to make really good rocket designs, you can't just throw them together. You have to actually do the math on your lifting stages, know exactly how much they can lift, and know exactly how much delta V they have. We'll get to the delta V in a later tutorial. Now, this guy has a thrust to weight ratio of 1.6. He'll lift off really fast, but not too fast. What's too fast in Kerbal Space Program, because the G-forces do not matter. So now it's starting to look like a more humble rocket that will actually get somewhere where you don't have all this, you're not sitting on top of all this fuel like we were before. I did forget to go into offline mode on Steam. It's not mad at that one. So yeah, it's lifting off, and that's how you get your your thrust to weight ratio. Now, before we cover Asparagus Staging, I want to go into some of the probe bodies and electronical components of Kerbal Space Program. So let's just end this flight and look at some of the more advanced parts that we didn't look at last episode, purely because we didn't have time. Now, the RCS we went over a little bit. You have your RCS tanks here. And the RCS is the same thing. You have a thrust to weight ratio for RCS as well, but it's not as simple as that. Because the thrust power is 1. So you're not gonna, and you're never gonna use your RCS in Kerbin's gravity, or yeah, Kerbin's gravity. So you're never gonna have that thrust to weight ratio. What am I saying? I'm totally wrong. But these are gonna be for rotating, so it's a totally different thing. And they're not going to work in the atmosphere because you're also working against your drag and stuff. So a thrust to weight ratio is never perfect because of the drag as well, but it's just kind of standardized that what'll work and what won't. Sometimes if you get exactly 1.0, that's not going to work, only because you have a lot of drag in the atmosphere. Certain atmospheres are more heavy, and then again you have to calculate these for every planet. So for Kerbin, which you can look up the other planets, I don't know them, I didn't have that prepared. Kerbin, the gravity is 9.81 meters per second, and that's why you multiply the mass by it, but other planets are going to have a lot more than that, so you have to calculate your thrust to weight ratio based off of the other planet's gravity once you get there. Alright, so that's it. So let's look at some of the other advanced stuff, such as probe bodies. Not advanced, but more advanced. Here we have a Stay Putnik. Now, these probes, right here it says they require an electrical charge. So they actually use electrical charge. They're extremely light, 0.05 compared to 0.08 or 0.8 and even this, which is 4. Now they do use electrical charge. Electrical charge comes in many forms, or the same form, but many varieties of how you get it. There's 3 different types of batteries, each containing their own little charge amount. Let's go ahead and rotate like so. So each of these contain different amount of charges and weigh different. So it's up to you what you use. So as this one uses 0.05, this one is 0.02, and this one is 0.005, which is even lighter. But it only holds electrical charge of 100, while this one holds 500, and this one holds 400. So they all hold different amounts Now, to obtain electrical charge in these batteries, there's 3 different ways. You have solar panels, which again are many varieties, if I can grab them. These are all different types of solar panels you could use. They all have different animations and look different. And then we've even got these big ones. You see all kinds of different solar panels. Each of these, you know, charge a little bit less. These two are exactly the same, but they're different. I don't understand why they're even there. But so all of these are different. They have different electrical charge per second, and you'll have to look at those because I wouldn't have time to look at them individually. Maybe in a future episode we'll look at the pros and cons of each one, but right now we cannot. Let's just look at one of them. So it says electrical charge is 18.0 per second. So if you were to divide 400 by 18.0, you would find out exactly how many seconds it would take to charge it. These little tiny ones are 45 per minute. So that's an extremely long time. They're not very powerful, but they're really, really tiny. So if we stick them on here, as you can see, they're not very big. But the other ones are. They're a lot bigger. So if we were to stick some of these on here, you can see they're bigger. Next off, we have the thermal generator, which is basically nuclear power. It gives 45 per minute as well and weighs a lot, but it's free energy. You don't have to have the sun. These solar panels, you need the sun to actually get them to work. We need to get rid of that. So we can stick this guy on top. Alright, a little thermal generator. And the last electrical charge is the engines. The engines themselves produce electrical charge as long as they're firing, but it's not very much. So it's 60 per minute as long as you're firing. So every minute that you're firing, your engines is going to produce electrical charge. Now, ways to get rid of the electrical charge are your probe bodies, your lights, which there's 2 different types, and your wheels, which there are 3 different types. And these are probe wheels. We'll get more on rover wheels. We'll get more on rovers in a separate tutorial. That'll be after the moon mission. So we could just send a rover to the moon after we've done that. Have this whole series all planned out. Alright, so we're about 12 minutes in. I'm going to go ahead and pull this guy out and show you. Actually, I forgot the science. These all use, or I thought they used, maybe they don't use electricity. SAS uses electricity, I know that. No, maybe not. I think it was a mod I used to use. So yeah, if you don't have any electricity on your probe isn't going to work. You're not going to be able to toggle your SAS. You're not going to be able to change your engines. That's the downside to probes, is that they're very light, but they actually require you to have some sort of electrical power on board. So if we extend these panels, you can see what they look like. They kind of clip the floor a bit, but they're fine. They all fold out. All the solar panels fold out in different animations and different sizes, but they'll automatically track the sun as well, so wherever the sun's pointing, if they have a direct line of sight to it, they will turn towards it, and the sun is that way. This one's blocked. It says direct sunlight, but it's not rotating right. But yeah, that's what a little probe looks like. That's really it for that. You kind of have to experiment with those. Same thrust to weight ratios apply, obviously. You're just going to have to add in the battery weights and stuff like that. Alright, and last but not least for this tutorial, we're going to cover the advanced staging techniques I was talking about. So we're going to, again, start with our command pod and our parachute. We're going to pull this guy up, and we're going to get decoupler. Now, Asparagus Staging, it has a really weird name, but it's very, very, very useful. It lets you get rid of mass as it's coming in. So your thrust to weight ratio is always changing throughout your ship. It's extremely hard to calculate your specific thrust to weight ratio on your ship, but a good rule of thumb is that it should work, really. As long as the asparagus stages are the same size, or the ones that you are dropping first are larger than the others. I don't have it prepared like I should have, so let's go ahead and get 3 of these. And 1 of these. So let's go ahead and do the math on this real quick. So we have our capsule, which we already know is 0.8 mass, so 0.8 plus the parachute, which is 0.1, so we're going to add 0.1, and then we've got a decoupler. So 0.05 plus 0.05, 3 engines, or 3 fuel tanks, which are 2.25. So we do plus 2.25 plus 2.25, or 2, oh, what am I doing? 2.25 times 3 plus 0.8 plus 0.1 plus, what was the decoupler again? 0.05, 0.05. So we get a mass of 7.7 plus, that's not even including the engine, mass of 1.25. So we get 8.95. I'm kind of doing this as I go along. During the advanced tutorial, I'll probably be explaining this more. I'm actually not going to do that. I shouldn't have done that. But, so, what we're going to do is we get 3 of these. I'll let you guys figure out the math because it's very, very long and tedious, and I'm not going to have time in this episode if I were to do it looking at the time now. So we're going to go with 6 symmetry. 6 symmetry. And we're going to stick these here. Now, asparagus staging is the technique of you dropping stages as they are used up. So you will only be carrying basically fuel that matters at all times. So if we put, if I can get these to clip on right, these here, and then we build up from there. So we put 1, 2, and then we put our engines on the bottom. Now this pretty much works in every single case you will ever have. You have a big cluster of engines, a big cluster of fuel tanks. Now the only problem is you have to get these all set up. So since we use 6 symmetry, everything is in symmetry groups. So we need to turn off the symmetry mode, get our fuel lines. Now if you hold shift and scroll in, you can actually look through these parts. That's what we need to do. We need to clip a fuel line onto this one and clip it onto this middle fuel tank. Fuel lines basically transfer fuel from one point to another. It takes fuel from the very first point you attach it to and puts it into the second point you attach it to. So any fuel that this is using, this tank stack is using, all the fuel will actually go to this tank as it's getting drained out. So right now, as this is standing, every single engine is using its own fuel except for the center one, which is using this stack's fuel. And this will tip over if we continue like that. So what we need to do is get the tank directly across from it and do the same thing. We attach fuel line to the tank, we attach fuel line to the middle. Good. So now we have basically the middle engine is using fuel from 2 tanks instead of 1. Now if we were to launch right now, all of these engines, I mean without the fuel lines, all of these engines are going to burn out at the exact same time. It's going to be a huge waste of fuel, but you're going to be going really fast with no altitude. So it's wasting a lot of fuel in the beginning stages, the atmosphere where it doesn't matter. You need to save as much fuel as possible. So what we need to do is get this tank here, the one next to it, we need to attach. So this fuel is coming into this one. We come on the other side. And the same deal with this one, like so, and then here, same deal, like so. Then this one we're going to skip. We don't need to have a fuel line there. So what's going on is none of these stages, the only 2 engines that are using their own fuel are these. So this tank is being used up by 4 different engines, or well, 3.5 because that middle tank is being used by 2. That middle engine is being fueled by 2 stacks. So this stack here is going to be the very first. This one and this one are going to be the first to run out of fuel. So we need to set up our staging appropriately. Now how you do that is, first off, you're going to add a stage down below your decouplers. First, you're going to want all your engines to fire at once. You add a stage down below your decouplers. You click the decouplers to expand the list, and then you select this one, and the box that goes whited out, you're going to hold over and click, and then you're going to drag down to 3. Same thing with this. We have to expand, hold over, find out which one it is, double check by holding over it, and you can see by like which one you're selecting. Click it and then drag. then we just need to do this in the order that these tanks are going to fall. So first it was this one, next it's this one. So again, we add a stage, click the decouplers, find out that it's the top one again, click it, drag it down, same thing as across. Bam. Very repetitive, and that should be all. So let's launch this to show you. I'm not very good at explaining it. It's extremely hard to explain. It's better to show you guys in practice what it does, other than trying to explain it. Basically how it works is you have two tanks opposite of each other feeding into the center one, and then each one on outside of it is feeding into each other. And I'm sure you guys understand. Let's hope. If you have any questions, leave your comment and I will try to get back to you. So now if we launch up from here, hold SAS, full throttle up, and launch. It looks like all the fuel's being drained, but in reality it's not. If we look into our center engine stack, none of this fuel is being drained at all. It's tilting over only because I don't have any ASAS on it at all. Or is it? Did I screw something up? I don't think so. Alright, so things are being drained. We're going to burn out one of our engines, or two of them right now. Two of them burned out just now, so we dropped the stacks. Now we're running on 5 engines. And I'll build the same rocket to show you the difference in the altitude you reach using your engines with the same rocket but with no fuel lines. Trying to keep this thing steady is a little bit tough. I didn't add ASAS onto it. And we won't on the other one either. It's alright to fly. It's just not as steady as it could possibly be. We're about to burn out more, so you let them go. So now we're running on 3 engines. And this is still enough mass to weight ratio only because we're dropping the same amount of weight as we're using. So it'll always be the same weight to mass ratio unless there's one exception. If these were bigger than all the other ones and you left them and it was overdoing it, like if there was 6 extra tanks on here, it's not going to work. You're going to not fly. So these engines are taking even longer to burn up because there's not so many. So basically it's using just the littlest amount of fuel to last as long as possible. Now if we look here, we have a huge orbit. We'll probably use this rocket in our orbital maneuvers tutorial just because I know it's capable of orbit now because it's doing just fine. So now we're in space. We're no longer in the atmosphere at all. Very light rocket, very fast rocket, minimalistic. We're going to burn out more stages. Go ahead and do that. And then we have another full stack. This rocket just lasts forever. Yeah, we're doing good. Doing really good. If I go ahead and physical time warp by holding Alt and the period key, and let's just see exactly how far this thing will go before we run out of fuel. We leave the system, or Kerbal into the orbit system. Let's see how much fuel we got left. Trying to keep this thing under control, going super fast. I don't normally just lift straight off the ground like this. I haven't done that in a long time. Let's see where we go. That's our path. We left Kerbal's gravity altogether. Alright, so that's how far that flight went. Now let's remove all those fuel lines and show you guys exactly how far it would get regularly. Which is going to be easier just to actually build a new one. So let's build it exactly the same. First the command pod, then we get a parachute, decoupler, fuel tanks. 1, 2, 3. You copy by holding Alt and clicking, and that'll copy sections of your ship, whatever you have selected. So that it makes it easier to instead of going bam, bam, bam. All right. Next off, we need our stack decouplers in 6 symmetry mode. Hitting X to go into the symmetry mode, and we just stick them on there. fuel tanks. Now, there's a little glitch right now that they're having trouble connecting, so that's why you do that. You just hold Alt and click, and then you gotta get them to attach like so. There's a trick to getting to them to attach like this, and you line up the dot and you hold it down. I just found that out the other day, actually. Very nice little tip somebody gave me on the live stream. Alright, so here we go. Same exact rocket design, but without the fuel lines. Now, you would think that it's the same amount of fuel, same amount of engines. Why wouldn't it go as far? But in reality, it actually doesn't. So this is going to be the final flight for this episode. It's advanced staging techniques and the thrust to weight ratio. I know it was a lot of math. It's going to be even more math in the next episode, which I'm not sure if I'm going to do orbital maneuvers or the advanced. Yeah, it's kind of intermediate. This one is the thrust to weight ratio. Really isn't hard stuff. It's very, very simple. You add up the mass, get your thrust to weight. It does get a little tricky in multiple stage rockets because you have to remember only the engines that are firing, and that's why you should work your way down just to make sure that thrust to weight is always more than one. And then you could just easily add your weights to each other for the lower stages. So the taller your rockets and the more stages you have, the bigger your bottom sections are going to be. So there's kind of like a good balanced line between having a bunch of stages and decoupling everything to only decoupling at the right time. So as you can see, this thing is almost dry, and we're barely out of the first part of the atmosphere. This is just showing you guys exactly how different it is. It's spinning. I'm not stopping it spinning, but it's spinning. It's kind of making it a little harder to control. We're definitely not going to get as far as that other ship did, that's for sure. Not nearly as far. And it just goes to show you how much more efficient it is, and you should always use Asparagus Staging for every single one of your designs. There's no reason not to unless you're lazy. I only just recently found out about it. It's a very odd name. People don't like it. So here we are burning out our engines. We no longer have any thrust, and we got as far as 203 when the other one went, I don't know how far it was. It was insanely far. It went out of the moon sphere of influence and min-miss and everything. So that just shows you exactly how much better it is. Now, I screwed up the staging and didn't add that, but it's not going to make a difference. We're still not going to get out of the atmosphere. Because if it was firing at the same time, it would have been dead right then too, and we probably would have just gotten maybe a few more meters per second of delta V out of it. Not much. Kind of going out of control. So yeah, we would have still been not in the same spot, per se. We'd probably be more out here where this thing is. But we wouldn't be here. So we're going to end up this episode, guys. Don't forget to always use Asparagus Staging. Don't forget to calculate the thrust to weight ratio of all of your rockets, because that's needed. I think I said mass to weight ratio earlier, sometime along there. Don't comment about that unless you already have, then don't worry about it. But yeah, your thrust to weight ratio is very, very important for getting your rocket off the ground. That's number one. Delta V is extremely important too, but it comes secondary, because you can have all the Delta V you want in the world, but not be able to get that Delta V off the ground. So we'll see you guys next time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.